One phase completed, the next phase is under construction that'll help with that eastbound traffic. Logan Boulevard is complete within the Collier County section. GL Homes must complete the roadway within 1 year of reaching their 297th CO. They're at about 240 right now. They're working with the city of Bonita Springs and Lee County to finish up the permitting of that roadway. So we're hoping that it comes online in the next year to year and a half. Vanderbilt Beach Road, Mark talked about, we have 2 bridges. This will bring some traffic off of Randall, hopefully come across Vanderbilt Beach Road Extension. Also, we have widening on Vanderbilt Beach Road over between 41 and east of Goodlet, programmed within our 5 years. So this will give you a solid 6-lane roadway from the beach out to Golden Gate Estates. Motley Collier intersection and Collier Boulevard, those were just recently completed.
Yep.
Now we're to our area. So I promise that'll probably be the last time you guys clap for me tonight. So on the south part of this is Tree Farm Road. We have a project that's under construction right now to extend Tree Farm Road with a roundabout. The developer, this developer here, used to be the Warm Springs PUD. They are required to build this section of Woodcrest, which will provide us a roadway from Collier Boulevard across Tree Farm to Woodcrest to a future signal, right across from Macquarie Drive. This is the intersection of Bel Air, where we are proposing median modifications. And what you see here is a large outlay of future planning. We have set aside, we have moved the canal for this to be a future overpass. When it is needed, we will be able to do so without having to reconstruct the entire intersection and move the canal at that time. So we have set the buildings back, we've set the right-of-way back to be able to accommodate that. So this is a close-up of that future overpass. You see this is Midland Bay and Bel Air Bay. So we do access management and signal spacing median treatments. For the Federal Highway Administration, increasing the distance between traffic signals improves the flow of traffic on major arterials, reduces congestion, reduces crashes, and improves air quality for heavily traveled corridors. Mockley Road is a heavily traveled corridor. Our proposal for Bel Air Bay is a very similar treatment to what you have currently outside your development, which would be dual lefts, and that is what we're proposing at Bel Air Bay. The reason we're proposing that is we get calls constantly about near-miss accidents of people coming out of Bel Air Bay Drive and hanging in the median. It's a very narrow median, and folks tend to like to stack out there to be able to make that left. So, Mark had talked about your 4 entrances. You have the Heritage Bay entrance, Quarry Drive, Bel Air Bay, Goodland, 2 other accesses to the commercial and the emergency on 951, as well as your other gated access. In doing my research for all of this, I found that the Heritage Bay folks are able to get through the development, but they're not able to get back.
Right.
So they are required to go out onto Collier Boulevard to get back around. So as Mark had talked about earlier, growth management requires interconnections of local streets between developments to facilitate that convenient movement of traffic, as well as our land development code identifies the circumstances that would require that. Per our land development code, the requirements of the only way to not do an interconnection is if it's not physically possible, the location of environmentally sensitive lands precludes the interconnection, if the shared access would, we have to encourage it as part of the redevelopment, and the interconnection, if the interconnection would provide no benefit, the example is non-residential component contains a single low traffic generating use such as a small general office building, and that's not the case with yours. Also, Mark talked about on the BCC minutes. So at the Board of County Commissioners, the representative of the Heritage Bay DRI PUD talked about that this was supposed to be an interconnected community to where folks would not have to travel out on the Immokalee Road to shop for their everyday needs. This right here, this yellow roadways, these two yellow roadways, Midland Bay and Bel Air Bay Drive, are county-maintained roadways. The bridges associated with those are maintained by the commercial development. So the bridges associated with Midland Bay Drive and Bel Air Bay Drive are maintained by the commercial property association. Limestone Trail, maintained by the quarry, as well as the quarry maintains the bridge out at Immokalee Road as well as Quarry Drive. So I pulled, like I said, I was going back and in our warehouse pulling documents. In our plat review for the quarry phase 1A, which included the construction of Limestone Trail, one of our reviewers from our engineering services staff recommended a pedestrian interconnect at the southern cul-de-sac of Coastline Way to the sidewalk along Limestone Trail. So that would be a sidewalk connection in this general area. The response that was provided by the developer at the time was, at the southern end of Coastline Court, the sidewalk is not tied to Limestone Trail because the sidewalk for Limestone Trail is on the opposite side of the street. That would also be connecting a street outside of the gated community, which could be used by the public, to a private internal street within the gated community. So everything that staff had been presented by the developer as we were progressing through the reviews of this was that Limestone Trail would be open to the public. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will be maintained by a private development. That has been the case in other areas. When we met with the representatives of the board, they had mentioned that you were experiencing some traffic delays during certain times of the day with regard to Quarry Drive. So we recently came out and we performed some traffic counts. It was on March 14th of 2018. Limestone Trail, between 7 and 9 a.m., there were a total of 41 vehicles. Between 4 and 6, there were a total of 62 for a total of 451 in a 24-hour period. For the Quarry Drive, between 7 and 9, which is the AM peak of people heading to the west, you had 156 folks. You had 102 who were northbound, 54 southbound. And between 4 and 6 p.m., you had 210, and your 24-hour total was 1,578 coming in and out of the Quarry Drive all day long. So, as a result of our meetings and our research, we have sat down and we have some county staff recommendations. Now, these are staff recommendations. Staff is not the be-all, end-all. Any decisions made with regard to this would ultimately have to be approved by our Board of County Commissioners. What we would recommend is that county staff work with the entire Heritage Bay DRI to fulfill the original intent of the development order for an interconnected community, allowing residential communities to have ingress and egress at all gated locations, and assist in helping to facilitate discussions of master association operations and maintenance, to spread that burden throughout the entire community to where it's not just on the backs of the quarry. We would also recommend, we would like to recommend to our Board of County Commissioners acceptance and ownership and maintenance of Limestone Trail, with the exception of the beautification components, which would be the landscaping and the pavers. That's not something that typically the county maintains. As well as Quarry Drive from the north side of Limestone Trail intersection south to the Quarry Drive Bridge, as well as the Quarry Drive Bridge that connects directly to Immokalee Road, but that would be subject to us receiving the as-built plans, a bridge inspection report, and a load rating report, because we would be required to obtain an FDOT bridge number for that, and those are documents that we would need to be able to do that. So that would take the burden of the maintenance of Limestone Trail, the bridge, as well as a portion of Quarry Drive.
Except for paving.
I'm gonna bring Jamie. You still here? Jamie coming in? going to take us back a couple slides, because I think it's the focus of what you guys would like to talk about tonight. Go back to folks, can I have your attention? We'll open a Q&A session a little bit. So here's the dilemma that you have right now tonight, that we have as well, too, why we're here. When this plan unit development was presented to the board for approval, they did not envision sub-HOAs and sub-communities. The challenge that you face is you've got two communities that don't look at each other the same way. This is one master development, so at some point in time, we got to figure out a way to bridge that gap. Because the DRI was approved, your development, the right to build these homes and develop the commercial property was based on what was submitted to the Board of County Commission to adopt. That's the challenge we face right now, which is one interconnected community. So Trinity sat down with me and we sat with some of our traffic folks and said, okay, how do we help these people the most we can without bringing on other taxpayers and get maybe some Board of County Commissioners approval? We said, okay, the bridges she pointed out are right now owned privately. Those bridges to replace are close to $2 million a piece. Okay? When you put up a traffic signal on a major arterial, a traffic signal costs about $500,000. That is the obligation of the DRI. Those are assessments they would place on you. So when the warrant study is done for Woodcrest and it meets a traffic signal, what we're obliged to do is send notice out to all the property owners that have obligations to that signal and say, the county is going to install a signal, you're responsible for your fair share of the signal. That's what ends up happening, because the signals are for the communities there. Sorry?
Why?
Well, thank you. Oh, you tell me to be quiet. All right, so time for me to go. So, I want to try and come up with a solution with you, but it's going to take talking to everybody within the DRI. And why I asked Mark Strain to come here tonight is because there's quite a bit of history that took place before you all purchased property. And that's hard to understand. What happens that we find, and why we changed the code somewhere around 2009, is developers entitle projects and then they flip them to sub-developers. They don't necessarily tell you all the details until the turnover process. And from talking to your board, I understand the turnover process was a little bit of a challenge as well too. So you guys look at the infrastructure of the turnover. I worked in a private sector for many years as a due diligence consultant. If I worked for you, I'd say, well, there's more to the turnover than just the infrastructure you get. There's obligations that go with the DRI. There's monitoring for environmental reasons, the bridges, the traffic signals. Usually you say to the developer for turnover, we have all these obligations, and we put enough in the fund to start them, and if we collect it for things like signals up front, so we're not doing special assessments later. But that didn't happen with this DRI. You're at a position now where you're mostly built out, you're two sub-communities, and we've got to figure out a way to bridge all these issues that have taken place over the last almost 15 years. So Trinity's recommendations, if you're amicable to talking about it, is try and develop a master board. Figure out what you want to do with these bridges. We're open to bringing them to the county commissioners and the county accepting responsibility. One of the slides she showed was this Woodcrest Road. The county's invested about $10 million between all the projects to tie that up. That's a mile spacing all the way across there. And she showed you that the overpass, when it's planned, crosses the touchdown past Bel Air. That's the challenge that we face. It cost us about $6 million a lane mile to build a road. I know the commissioner and I were talking about funding. The question is going to come up potentially in the fall about a sales tax. It's going to come up about how you fund roadway improvements. Our capital program in 2006 was almost, in 5 years for roads, was close to $1 billion. So you can see what we're dealing with going forward. So I think now we're ready to open up a little bit of Q&A, if that's what you'd like to do. Some of your questions with the sheriff's officers and the sheriff's deputies can come up and sit at the table, because you had some of the problems you had with people who were coming to the other back end and using ATVs and how you deal with the sheriff's office. Tony's here because the design that's there, the county's willing to work with them to design.
Right at that table, we're going to set it up there.
It's only one lane right now striped. You probably want to stripe it as 2 lanes, because they work better with traffic signals there. So, you want to do Q&A? Now's a good time to do that. The Adams in the back of the microphone.
So my name is Joe Boudreaux, and hey, thanks a lot for everybody coming to explain the future history of Collier County. We really appreciate it. So we're all here for a property that we have on Limestone Trail. And you as well know that the PUD also says that we have the right to gate both one side or the other with a guardhouse and a gate and allow Heritage Bay and us to use that, period. And its plat is dedicated to us. So can you tell me what rule or what code you're going through that you're taking our road to your benefit?
Well, as the developer responded back to us when the road was designed, it said it would be open to the public. That was the developer when they submitted the plat. Your DRI, when it was submitted, as Mark showed you as part of the documents, showed an interconnected. The DRI documents also said that as part of that interconnection would reduce traffic on Mockley Road. So if you gate these things and people can't use them, they've got to go out to Mockley Road. You'd be inconsistent with your DRI and your PUD.
Okay, well, thank you for that, but you're still not telling me how, what code or anything you're using to take our roads. Where were you coming up with that?
It's not a code I'm using. The Heritage Bay PUD DRI has a number which is an ordinance. That's actually a code.
And what is that?
I'm sorry?
What was the number that you just referred to?
I can tell you in a second. It's the ordinance for the PUD approval. It's actually a
I'm
subject.
just asking for what definition you're taking these roads from. You're not giving us any information. You're great history, we appreciate it, but you're not telling us what you're referring codes to take our private property.
What Mark presented to you at the beginning, those diagrams are factual documents that exhibits to your ordinance. The ordinance number is 0346. I want the glasses for close. I need to follow the ordinance. That ordinance has a master plan. There's a section called transportation in that ordinance, and it says the roads are interconnected, and that's what was brought to the board. The attorney that actually got that ordinance approved said on the record that all of these developments will be interconnected and share the access points and be able to travel back and forth. So if you put up gates, it has to be behind that to allow people from the commercial property to get back as well too.
And I understand that, and that's why Bel Air Road is in existence. Our road, Limestone Trail, does not complete your service. Bel Air Road does exactly what you guys said in your document, so therefore, that road will complete what you want, and Limestone Trail doesn't need to be associated with some type of improvement for Mockley to go a mile.
I appreciate what you're saying, but that's not what was conveyed during the approval process of this PUD.
But that's what's in writing.
I don't want to debate because obviously I'm going to be on a losing end, looking for the rope to come out of the ceiling right now. It's not why I'm here. What I'm here to tell you is that when the PUD DRI was approved, statements were made, documents were exhibited, and even the developer who platted the road, the applicant said, this is going to be used for public access. So everything that was submitted to the county stated that was the case. So all along the way, that was the process.
But we're allowed to put up gates and everything on a public road. That makes no sense.
Well, you're allowed to put up gates behind that so that you can still use that front access point. But I don't want to debate that because we're not going to get anywhere if that's all we thought.
You're right.
Okay, thank you. So one at a time, if this gentleman's raising his hand, if you want to use the microphone.
Hi, Jerry Solomon.
There's a line over there.
Go ahead, Jerry. Question, you said you have to stick by that because that's what was approved in the documents. But wasn't the light at Bel Air Drive also approved in the documents? I have a couple questions. Go ahead.
He asked me if the light at Bel Air was approved. As Mark pointed out, it's when warranted. Now, if everything's interconnected, they do a traffic study. If we follow FDOT guidelines. This is a through public street. You put a signal over there. You do a warrant study. It wouldn't meet warrants. The developer did a pre-warrant study before this was connected with a signal. He would have to do it afterwards. The commercial developer. To meet warrants, they measure total 8-hour traffic volumes. They measure left turns. So when you put a signal here, it's probably not going to meet a warrant farther there. Not to mention the fact when you touch down an overpass, it's where the overpass will touch down. So for design purposes, that's not the place where you put it, and probably wouldn't be warranted.
And I can understand that now, so it's not going to. My other question on that overpass, is the east-west overpass at all dependent on extending Collier into Lee County?
Yes and no. It's dependent on how much volume picks up ultimately over time, east-west on Cardi Boulevard. you try and free up the most predominant movement. So when you looked at Golden Gate Parkway and Airport Road, that was the east-west predominant movement. We were trying to reduce the number of green time. So the overpass took that out of the equation. So when we build a Vanderbilt Beach Road, which is probably the most important improvement you want us to do, it'll drop the volumes down on Lockley Road. When we drop the volumes down on Lockley Road, it extends the amount of time that we'll need before an overpass is warranted.
I asked you this when you had the meeting at Village Walk. It looks like the probability, and you all agreed to that, of extending Collier into Lee County, it's not even in the 2040 plan. And it probably is not going to be here for 25 or 50 years if ever. Correct. So it's also likely you won't have the east-west flyover for 20, 25, 30 years. That's a high probability.
That's possible.
And that all seems to be what's impacting why we have to go out a half a mile from that intersection. And a lot of us are here because of 160 feet. An error that was made by someone. So I didn't quite understand when you said 231. Why can't we just reshape that road to pick up 160 feet?
I jumped up when Mark made his presentation. He's a very technical guy. What it says is when it meets warrants. And that's why I said the professional traffic engineer does the study. When you put a signal here, which because of Woodcrest is going to get a signal no matter what. When this was approved, it was meant to line up with this public road. When you put a signal here first, okay, this will not meet warrants. And then the spacing, let me finish, the spacing from this signal to the signal of Mockley is even farther. So it cost us $6 million a lane mile to build a road. When you space out the signals farther, and you already have one going at Woodcrest Drive, and you do the warrant study at Bel Air, it probably won't meet warrants. That's the challenge. It has nothing to do with that 160 feet in my opinion. That's just made it so we'll go back to the folks that are over there.
How we doing? So the young lady gave us a nice presentation on the massive traffic problems we're going to have. And you seem to be alluding to the fact that you think that little strip of roadway is going to solve a big problem on Mockley Road. That's redundant. It's ridiculous. And you keep saying you want these communities interconnected, but the PUD never named a master declarer. That's private property. That was what the PUD made clear. It's private property. How can you go and try and take it back?
Again, I'll go to what the developer submitted when he submitted the plat. He said, this is for public purposes. And then when the DRI submitted, it's all interconnected. So,
But having said that, you guys amended and put in a PUD when the two communities split, and you never declared a master development or a master board to oversee that, and it's deeded as private property.
we don't do that. We don't declare master. And that is the challenge. We recognized that folly in about 2006. Matter of fact, I'm the one that worked with Mark to change the land development code that says going forward, these larger developments are going to have to declare a master. The county doesn't declare a master of development. Developers, you know, when they fragmented your community and they still built it according to the plan, kinda, and when the community started putting up gates and saying, well, so many people can come in this way, but so many people can't, they were violating the DRI, probably not even knowing it. And this has started to come to a head when the commercial developer applied, and then now that we're giving up this limestone wedge. So things have brought us to today, why we're here tonight, but there should be one master HOA that covers all of your obligations.
But there's not, and you never changed the PUD to reflect that.
What that does is, just to explain, what it does is it pits one HOA against another. Because they're gonna say, we should have access to the roads and to the signal, and you should have access to their signal or their access point on 951, and you should be able to get to the commercial. That's the PBDR, that's the challenge we're facing this year.
Well, the challenge we're facing is that we're the only development in Collier County that you're claiming has this interconnectivity. Nobody else has it.
That's not true. If you look at Laley, which is another DRI, they did the same thing. They had to build a spine public road, and they had to do connections as well too. All large DRIs have gone through this. Rural Lands West, out of Maria, all the projects that come in that are plus 2,000 units, all go through this master review for a master DRI. So here's what I don't want to do, because I'm going to lose. Arguing with you folks tonight, it's not why I'm here. I'm here to try and say, what can I do to help you, because there's going to be challenges going forward. What can I take to the board that's reasonable that we can support? And I think what I'm saying, what we've offered is to say, let's look at these roadways that you're maintaining. If they're meant to be public, as per your DRI, as per the plat that was submitted, we will offer to maintain those, because I can't say to the board in one phase, well, they're required by the DRI to do that. We've already accepted these as public roads. We'll maintain this as a public road and bridges as well too. That's an encumbrance that we normally do not take.
Okay.
I'll agree with you to
a point then, if you want to do that, you want to accommodate us, put up a privacy wall and pay us for our road.
I couldn't recommend that because we haven't done that to any other community in Clark County. That's a precedent. So we'll keep taking Q&A, but if it's the same question back and forth, I'm not going to win. I'm not here to try and make our folks feel uncomfortable. I've been doing public meetings for 15 years. I know what it's like to try and go through this and try.
Let's keep down, please.
So, my question, is this on? No. Thank you. My question for the flow of traffic, because that's what all this is about, is flow of traffic. So we have the quarry and we have Heritage Bay, sharing the Heritage Bay PUD. We have 1,250 doors in the Heritage Bay community. We have 900 doors in the quarry community. So we're talking about 1,250 doors that we are concerned about, and that's why we're opening up Limestone Trail to light. What's the flow of traffic that you're going to force from the commercial property? Are you forcing the traffic to use Limestone Trail to head east to come back west? Or are they going to have access to move west? Because most of the people using the commercial property in the lower left corner of the PUD will then want to exit onto Immokalee and go west.
And they'll be allowed to do that.
Okay, so the only question then is, what's the traffic that you're forcing onto Limestone Trail?
You raised a great point. Her question was, can they go west at this intersection? Of course they will. They'll be able to come out and go west. They'll even be able to come from the west and come in. If somebody wants to go this way, which when you model it, you're not going to get a lot of people doing that, we'll go back east. That's where the signal is. So you're making my case. The directional left that you're going to get at Bel Air will accommodate most of the movements. That's why it won't be traffic warrants. Because the people coming from the west going to the shopping center, the congested urban area, will be able to come in with a directional left and come out and go that way. So you're not forcing those folks. The only person that's using this is someone that may come in and then want to go out and go to the east, which when you traffic model it is very low.
So then can you also talk about the traffic model that we have currently when you exit the commercial property to 951, just out to the left, you force them to go north and do a U-turn to come back 951 to go south. Well, what's the thought process on that one? Because that's going to become an absolute nightmare as we increase all of the traffic in this area.
If you notice all the intersections in Cuyahoga County that were designed prior to us doing a lot of planning, you've got to get the approaches cleaned, because whenever there's a driveway within 300 or 400 feet, it bogs down the signal time because people are trying to cross. So at the Strand Boulevard, we shut down an entrance, we pushed it back 500 feet because then you can queue up the signal. So you keep that spacing as much as you can away from the signal, because when the spacing gets violated, less than that, the signal doesn't operate anymore. People start cutting in front of each other. That's why we force that back up. So it'll operate faster. It's a slight inconvenience to go north and then go back south, but if you don't do that, now you're modifying the signal time and green time at the intersection and trying to accommodate that. That's why it was done. Private engineers design that all the time.
So my only other point was, it seemed one of the things in the presentations was that you had to do a 65% rule in order to make sure that the communities are using the interconnected roads, etc. And I do believe that our PUD sustains that 65%. because in the agreements between the communities, we do have the access of Heritage Bay community, the 1,250 doors, coming through and being able to not be on the westbound side of Immokalee for a majority of the portion. So, and that's where I'm still having a little trouble with why the 1,250 doors that have access to not have to be on Immokalee, why we have to open that up to the entire world.
When you say the entire world,
Well, it is the entire world, because anybody who comes into this little section can now access that road and come out.
that would be the entire world, I think is what I'm getting at.
If they visit here.
The gate's right there, right? So you're the only people who are gonna use, come through to get to the signal, are the ones that want to go east. You're not gonna get a big draw, that's the question of the developer's traffic. Draws to go back west, which they have west movement, there's an interchange over there. All right, so if you traffic profile, I'll go deeper with it. The challenges you're gonna face is the ownership of the bridges, the traffic signal warning, the connection of the roads. The thought process I'm gonna suggest to you is assign some community leaders, because you can't make decisions in a forum like this if you can bring someone to the board. I would like to work with your HOA leadership and the folks from and get them on, I guess, Heritage Bay, on the side of the house. Assign them to work with us and try and come back with some solutions we can bring to you. Even with me suggesting to the board members about taking over the bridges and the roadway, that's a stretch, but I think we can make a good case and say this is why we'll maintain those. And if it means maintaining the landscape, we'll talk about that too. And the commissioner wanted to say something.
So we're still on the question and answer phase. My question is to do with whether you're taking responsibility for our driveway, because if you're going to route a whole lot more traffic on our driveway, you're going to reduce the quality of the driveway, you're going to basically cause more cost to maintain it, and you're going to reduce the value of our homes.
I don't know if it's going to reduce.
If you're going to make this access for all the eastbound traffic,
This is required as part of the development. So whether we're arguing about it, it is. What I'm saying is, if it's required, maintain to be open. And since we've accepted these as public roads, I'm willing to ask the board to say, let's maintain that one as well too. It's not something we normally do. But if we're at this point right now, we're trying to fix things after the fact, that is something I can bring to them.
my suggestion would be to put in another bridge. It'd be less cost to the county than to try to maintain ours, which wasn't constructed for the purpose, and it's going to have a deleterious effect on our community, and it's not very expensive to put in a bridge as compared to the cost you're going to have picking up the whole road and restoring our bridge to what it needed.
Again, we could talk about bridges. A bridge is close to $2 million, $1.5 million.